Hey there, YouTubers. Back in the car. You saw me yesterday in my yard. Well, actually didn't see me, but me walking through my yard, and I gave you a little fresh, fresh perspective of where I live and the serene area that I live in. And I got cut off because as I was doing the video, telemarketer called, so that shot my phone off and to the telemarketer. But hopefully no telemarketers call around this time. They usually call around the evening, and I was going to do that video right before I went to work, so I got cut short anyway. A little more back onto double standards, that is hypocrisy. And I said it's not hypocrisy. It was that I when I left off, I was talking about a Mike and Kim devotee who introduced a video. Once again, another people are addicted to YouTube videos. As far as instead of libraries, instead of actually going and getting some books and reading some really first source material, people generally like whatever's available on the internet. And there are some good positives and some negatives. The positive is that there is a relatively great deal amount of information available on the internet that you wouldn't have to buy a book for. Give you the writings of the Apostolic Fathers, the Nicene Fathers, is available on the internet, free of charge. I mean, I have the library. I have the Nicene and Nicene Fathers in my library. I even have a commentary series based upon all of their perspectives on Scripture. But you can get it on the internet. You can read the men who knew the apostles, that were mentored by the apostles, right on the internet, free of charge. And then you get a perspective of what Christians thought. Christians that lived in the first century that were not the apostles. So here's an extra biblical work. It's not in the Bible, but these are the writings of people that the apostles spoke to, left in charge of churches in the first century, and we get their perspective. It's outside of the Bible. There are lots of other things available. Ancient historians you can read on the internet, like Tacitus and his annals, or Pliny the Younger, or I can go on and on. You can read the writings of Josephus on the internet, free. Philo, I think that might be also available free. But here are first source material of what Christians were thinking and what Roman historians were thinking, and Jewish historians were thinking. That's free and available on the internet. And then you also have on YouTube, scholars and theologians and historians. You can listen to Bart Ehrman, who's a historian. He's an agnostic historian, but he has a lot of good stuff also. Just because he's not a Christian anymore doesn't mean he's a completely terrible historian. He definitely fights against mythicism, a lot of the bunk that's out there that's put out by atheists and agnostics that he recognizes as just absolute bunk. But the problem is, and we're talking about double standards and hypocrisy, is that there's a mentality, there's an absolute hatred for the Watchtower, and many ex-witnesses are unable to separate their hatred from the cult. And then you have people that will box that hatred and use it, and that innate feeling that we have that was taught to us, ingrained in the cult, about religion in general. Religion is a snare and a racket, still dwells in us. We're so angry at this cult that we kind of broad brush that hatred to all religion, and all of Christianity in particular, because what we think we know what Christianity is about. I know a lot of ex-witnesses who still spew forth the things that they were taught as witnesses and still have those views. And they were ingrained in them. And so they're still mentally enslaved to the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. And if you don't have time to really sort those things out, and, I've been out for 22 years, and I had some bad habits. I had to sort them out. I had to experience Christianity firsthand. I thought I knew Christianity when I first came out. I did a little reading, but I also started going to church and starting to see firsthand the Christian experience. And I thought I was a big shot. I thought I should be out there speaking. I knew more about Christianity than the Christians in the churches, including the pastors. Because we come out and we still have this innate cultic arrogance. So just imagine what happens in today's instant society, the internet. It's like that. Where you can develop a platform and a following instantaneously. And you know nothing, and you still have that hatred. I mean, it used to happen back then, before the internet. There was I'll tell you a little bit about a controversy that occurred not too long ago, early on when I started the podcast, which was the residuals of a controversy that occurred at the Witnesses Now for Jesus convention. It's about a guy who, I think he's no longer with us, Daniel Earl Hall. Dan Hall was very charismatic, really nice guy. If you met him, funny. But he was basically starting his own cult. He had his own teachings that were against Christian teachings. And some of us, we liked him so much that we were in denial about what he was teaching. In fact, a lot of us did. And I was with a guy named Dwayne Magnani, and we were exposing this guy. And no one was taking him to task on what he was teaching. Now, I'm not going to say the specifics of what he was teaching exactly, because for some of you, you wouldn't even care. But I will say that it died out, and he kind of went back to his home, so to speak, and everyone, it just died out. It fizzled out. It exploded, and then it fizzled out. Then years later, he was on Rick Farron's Six Screens telenetwork. And he was giving Rick a hard time about the way Rick ran his program, but it's Rick's program, and he has every right to run it the way he wants. Rick likes to do non-religious Saturdays, and every other Sunday he does one that's focused on Christianity. And I can see the sense of that now in hindsight. I kind of agreed with Dan at the time. And I kind of forgot what he had done in the past. And I thought that, I guess he's cleared all that out. Well, Dan and a couple other people that I won't mention started a podcast on my radio program. He wanted to leave Rick's Six Screens because he thought that Rick was not doing the right Christian thing. Winds up, Dan comes onto my podcast. I give him Sundays with a bunch of other people. And I happened to be listening one day, and he's spewing stuff that I could not absolutely endorse. It was actually anti-Christian, and it was on another topic. And I didn't want to be responsible for the kind of message that he was putting out about Christianity, which was a complete misrepresentation and a lie. It was bunk. And so, eventually, they left, and they did their own podcast, and it lasted barely a year. and it died out. Because really, in all honesty, Dan was all about Dan. He was all about people reading his books. He wanted all the attention. And to be honest with you, I don't know exactly why it died out, but he was constantly pushing his books. It was kind of like Charles Taze Russell all over again. You got to read my books. My studies in the scriptures as an authoritative, this is the authority on scripture. Dan thought much of himself, too much of himself, and that it became where he was almost like a Charles Taze Russell type of figure, really pushing his books and his ideas, and everybody else was wrong. There's a lot of room in Christianity for disagreement. There's a lot of room. People make a lot of assumptions about what I personally believe. They say, oh, Gus, you don't, But if anybody really was to ask, they'd be shocked that I have some things that I really don't say on this channel, and I don't go around talking about, and I just hold those as close to the vest as possible, because I know that they can cause division. And I'm not about division. I'm not about being divisive, except for if someone is going to misrepresent 2,000 years of Christianity on major stuff. And if someone's promoting circus act type stuff, it's like carnival stuff. The guy that used to come on in the wagon trails back in the day, and he had these fake medicines and sarsaparilla, which was soda. And some of the stuff was good. He had sarsaparilla, that was definitely tasty. But he had these fake medicines. And he pushed the fake medicines, and people would buy it, and nothing would happen. And they got conned by a carny guy. And that's what happens now when you have people that leave the cults that still think like Jehovah's Witnesses about Christianity. They hate, Christianity's lost, religion's a snare and a racket, that kind of bananas. And they have no idea, none, about what Christianity teaches, or have ever experienced actual authentic Christianity to even say on an experience level that there's something wrong with it. And then you got people like the lady that was trying to push that video. And I even had someone make a comment saying that, I've always been into conspiracy theory stuff, even before Mike and Kim. And I'm not going to name that person. That person's probably watching. And the fact is that, if that's what you want, if that's, you're only going to get what you want. If you want to live the world as in that everything has a secret, hidden knowledge that nobody else knows about, and therefore you only know the secret if you're in tune with this person or that person, then Mike and Kim is the channel for you, especially secret knowledge against Christianity. Mike had a video called Puzzle of the Ages. And I don't even think that he has it up anymore, because this is what Mike and Kim do. They'll say stuff and then they'll take it off. They'll take it off because once it's been debunked or exposed, they don't want anybody else to know how embarrassed they are about putting that information out. In fact, the reason why I started making up videos again, because Kimmy stalked me on somebody else's YouTube channel and started lambasting me for a comment I made, which was not even an attack. It was a comparison of them with John Cedars, and John Cedars being ultra-logical, anti-supernatural, and him having an expressed viewpoint, as opposed to them being ultra-conspiracy theorists and selling all kinds of craziness, UFOs, aliens, Gnostic knowledge, everything that's under the sun that's far, far crazy stuff. And hyping up just really bad information. And this person actually even made a refer to Ray Hagin's, Dr. Ray Hagin's. There's a couple of bad pieces of information that they've put out. Ray Hagin's, Dr. Ray Hagin's, doesn't have a doctorate, by the way. You have Atwell, who they're going to be coming out with that stuff soon, which is, even amongst Jesus mythicists, is crazy Jesus mythicism. Even amongst that group or community of Jesus mythicists, which is the teaching that Jesus never existed, he's viewed as so crazy out there that others just think he's just out there, out to lunch. Including Bart Ehrman, who's another person that they pushed because he's, anti-authenticity of the New Testament. Because anything that's against Christianity, it really, basically what it is we have this mentality when we come out of the witnesses, and Mike and Kim personify that mentality, that is anything but Jesus. Which means anything but Christianity, basically. Anything is good but Jesus. It didn't start out as anything but Jesus, it was anything but the Bible. But it eventually, once you throw out the Bible, once you attack the Old Testament, then you have to attack the New Testament, and then you have to attack Jesus' person, which is what Atwell is all about. And then you have the Freemasonic Luciferians, the guy that they push forth, that I've been talking about, who went in the desert and had aliens, basically, he said, I'll do whatever you say, but don't freak me out. This is the bunk that you either are going to feed, and it's not reality. It's not even good research. It's just anything but Jesus. Even if it is the same methods and tactics of the cult that we came out of. That's hypocrisy and a double standard. It's such a derangement. It's a derangement that you're willing to accept anything but Jesus and anything but Christianity, and that you're not even willing to consider the possibilities that Jesus is who he said he was. The way, the truth, and the life. And you're not even willing to consider life in the church as a possibility of that, something that would be healthy for you. That you would be surrounded around amazing people. And to think that churches are all bad, when churches are pillars in the communities that they are in. Doing much for the homeless, people that are non-believers. Doing much overseas for people that are non-believers. I'll share one, and I've shared this before, one instance of absolute selflessness from the church. And it's 18 minutes in, so I'm just going to try to be as quick as possible. I want to cut this under 25. Franklin Graham has a charity called Samaritan's Purse. And a great Christian, American Christian, went to was it Thailand? No, Indonesia. Went to Indonesia. And about 10 years ago, Indonesian Christians were being killed, slaughtered at the pace of 1 million Christians a year. And this was before the great tsunami that hit, and I think it was in 2011. For 10 years, 10 million Christians were killed in Indonesia. This American Christian started an orphanage in Indonesia for HIV babies. And Indonesian women who did not want to be parents to their AIDS-infected babies. and were afraid of their AIDS-infected babies, went to this orphanage. And the job of this woman, this Christian woman, and the Christians that volunteered there, was to take these fully blown AIDS babies and have them experience the handling of a human, to feel touch, to feel skin on them, to be fed and to be loved before they die. And that was the entire goal of the orphanage. And at times, babies would live to 10 or 11 years old and die of AIDS. Maybe a few survived into teen years, maybe even fewer into adulthood. I don't know the exact stats, but I do know that some would live up to 10 or 11. And their whole goal was that these babies would experience human touch before they died. Now, she could live in America, but here she was living for these babies in a country which would kill her at the time. Then the tsunami hit and killed over 200,000 people on the shores of Thailand and India and all of that area. And Indonesia was hit the hardest. And the Indonesian government refused to allow Christian missionaries into their country to bring Bibles. So Indonesian missionaries, Christians were not allowed into Indonesia. But after this catastrophe, which killed so many Indonesians, they welcomed Christians to come with their Bibles as long as they came with their medicine. And what has happened since then is that 30% of the islands of Indonesia, the nation of Indonesia, which killed Christians, is now 30% Christian. And I really think that it has something to do with the start of one person, one dear American Christian who had a heart for AIDS babies in Indonesia. You can read about her ministry in Franklin Graham's book, The Name. And it's on the internet, but it's been a long time since I went to the website. Don't even know if the ministry still exists, but I'm sure if it does, it's thriving to beyond just AIDS-infected babies. Christians do amazing things in the name of Jesus. They're prompted to. And there are people who claim to be Christians and do all kinds of selfish things and think that they're following Jesus. And Jesus said something in the Bible, what's going to happen to people, the fakers, the cons. He says they're going to say to him, Lord, Lord, didn't we do powerful works in your name? And he's going to say, I never knew you. Get away from me, you workers of lawlessness. So the final judgment on fakers will be Jesus. Experienced Christianity, I have, out of the cult. I've had time to heal. I've had time to sort things out. I'm not a conspiracy nut. I've made good friends in ministry. I've been mentored by scholars and theologians and friendships of solid Christians. And that's not to say that I shouldn't be tested. Test anything that I put on this video or any of my videos out. You know, some person corrected me. And I had put that correction in the description about Rose Ball. She wasn't an adopted daughter of Russell, but she was a lady who was living with Russell, Charles and Maria Russell, and was having an affair, probably. We know Maria says that Charles was having an affair with this lady, Rose Ball. So that's what I have to say about hypocrisy and double standards. For those of us who want to judge the cult that we came from, maybe you shouldn't be implementing their measures. Then you're just as guilty as they are. And maybe we shouldn't tolerate our friends, whoever they are, no matter how great they've been to us or how much we think about them if they are implementing hypocritically the measures, the methods of the cults. You all have a blessed day. Bye-bye.